Okay, let's dive right into this fascinating shift. For about a decade, the core pitch for artificial intelligence was basically the exact same pitch we use for electricity. We were all told it was a utility. You plug it in, it's always on, it's broadly neutral, and it just seamlessly flows to whoever pays the bill, right? It was this really comforting metaphor that justified massive, massive spending. But in a single, chaotic stretch of weeks in 2026, that decade-long myth of AI as a neutral, ever-present utility was shattered completely. Welcome to our latest explainer, where we're going to unpack exactly how AI stopped being a utility and transformed into a highly controlled lever. We are moving away from this really comfortable assumption of abundance, neutrality, and permanence. This idea that AI is just going to be there tomorrow for everyone on the exact same terms. Instead, we're waking up to a harsh new reality. And this reality is defined by scarcity, strict control, and most importantly, revocability. Think about it. A lever can be throttled, it can be gated, it can be repriced, and crucially, someone specific holds the power to just turn it all off. So here is our roadmap for today to understand how this happened. We'll cover the utility illusion shattering, the physical choke points, the digital gates, the market enforcers, and finally how to survive the kill switch era. Let's start right off with part 1, the utility illusion shatters, tracing back to the events of 2026. In a rapid-fire sequence in 2026, things got real very fast. First, a government literally switched off a frontier AI model worldwide on roughly 90 minutes' notice. Boom, dark. Then, a defense ministry turned an active war into a rentable data set, but with massive, unprecedented strings attached. And finally, the richest AI company on Earth leased supercomputers to direct rivals while explicitly reserving the right to seize them back. Now, these weren't glitches or accidents. They were stark, intentional demonstrations that AI absolutely does not flow freely. It passes through a very small number of tightly controlled choke points. Which brings us to part 2, physical choke points. Let's look at power and compute. When you step back and look at the entire stack, the binding constraint on frontier AI actually isn't human talent. And surprisingly, it isn't even the chips themselves. It's the brute force physical infrastructure required to run it all. And that whole journey starts right at the absolute base layer with our first major choke point, power. To truly understand the sheer scale of this barrier to entry, consider this number, 2 gigawatts. That is the massive power draw SpaceX's Memphis complex is running toward. They actually bypass the traditional utility grid entirely, opting to build their own on-site gas generation because simply waiting on a standard utility interconnection takes years. Whoever can conjure power at that immense, city-sized scale sets the absolute ceiling on everyone else's compute. So the lever holders here, it's a very short list of hyperscale builders and the governments that permit them. Moving one layer up the physical stack to compute, the concentration of power gets even starker. Just take xAI's Colossus cluster, which houses an unfathomable 555,000 GPUs. It's a staggering amount of hardware. But the real tell of 2026 isn't just who owns these massive clusters, it's who is renting them. The dynamic here is just wild. Anthropic is paying roughly $1.25 billion every single month, and Google signed a deal near $920 million a month. That is $26 billion a year flowing directly to competitors. It's an incredible irony, right? You're literally funding the enemies who are actively trying to beat you. These frontier labs largely don't own their core compute. They rent it from rivals who can legally reclaim it. And listen, if you are renting your core infrastructure from a rival who can yank it away, you don't have a utility. You have a massive dependency. Moving right along to part 3, digital gates. This is where data and access become geopolitics. Unique, completely unbuyable data is the next major choke point. Look at Ukraine's Avengers Labs. They are taking millions of annotated frames of real combat footage, something absolutely no one outside the war zone can collect, and turning it into a licensed resource. But the condition is the lever here. Companies can train on it, sure, but Ukraine keeps the improved model. It's literally data as a sovereign asset. Over on the corporate side, Perplexity's search as code is making a similar bet. They are building massive moats with proprietary, well-labeled data that nobody else can see. They're anticipating that the AI models themselves will eventually commoditize, but that unique data? That absolutely will not. The fourth choke point is model access itself. And this is where a theoretical kill switch was actually pulled. On June 12, 2026, a U.S. export control directive forced Anthropic to disable its newest models, Fable 5 and Mythos 5, for every single customer on the planet overnight, citing national security. Imagine that. Long-standing allies who had been using this exact technology for their own cyber defense suddenly lost access without a moment's warning. The crucial takeaway here is perfectly summed up by a Deutsche Bank economist right after that shutdown. They said, "You can't rely on something that could be switched off." It hits the nail on the head. You simply cannot build critical infrastructure on a foundation that can vanish in an instant. Access is entirely revocable, whether that's by governments enforcing export controls or by the AI providers themselves deciding to alter terms, hike up pricing, or implement geofencing. Okay, part 4, market enforcers. Let's dig into distribution and capital. Because let's be real, owning a world-class model actually means very little if you don't have a direct channel to the end user. That is why the application layer is such a massive choke point. Consider this. SpaceX paid $60 billion for Cursor. Why? They certainly didn't pay $60 billion just for an AI model. They paid that astronomical sum to control the developer interface, the everyday tooling where AI actually makes real money, and to capture all that invaluable usage data continuously flowing back from it. Control the interface, and you dictate exactly which model gets reached and which feedback loop gets fed. And sitting above all of these choke points is the ultimate gatekeeper: capital. The sheer financial intensity of this industry is staggering. It relies heavily on what is known as circular financing. We are talking about billions of dollars in compute rentals just swapping between direct competitors, and multi-billion-dollar all-stock acquisitions that really just serve to inflate valuations heading into public listings. This entire financial structure acts as a massive exclusionary gate, locking out pretty much everyone except the largest sovereign wealth funds and the absolute biggest corporate balance sheets on Earth. So where does that leave everyone else? Part 5, surviving the kill switch era. The lesson we all need to internalize here is architectural, not philosophical. If any single choke point in your stack can be squeezed, single sourcing your AI is quite literally a latent outage waiting to happen. Optionality and portability are absolute necessities now. You absolutely need multi-model architectures, clear exit ramps built right into your vendor contracts, and critically, the ability to fall back to running your own local weights if things go sideways. And because of these immense squeezing pressures, open-weight models have emerged as the quiet, heavyweight champions of this new era. It really comes down to a simple matter of physics and control. Because weights you can physically download and run on your own proprietary hardware cannot be revoked by any state, and they sure can't be switched off by any mega corporation. In a world increasingly defined by levers and kill switches, open-weight models have become the ultimate strategic safeguard. The old utility framing assumed you would never have to ask who controlled the wire, because hey, the wire was neutral and always live. But the lever framing forces a much, much harder question. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final critical thought to chew on regarding your own technology stack. Look closely at the tools you rely on every single day. Who actually holds your lever? And if they decide to pull it tomorrow, do you have any optionality left?